ただいま。聞こえてますか？なんか、裏のハードディスク触ってたら、おかしなことになった。裏のハードディスク触ってたらおかしなことになっちゃって。画面真っ黒になっちゃった。で、リセットをしたわ。よし。で、腰つべ一旦落ちたな。軽く触っただけだけどな。電源入ったまま触っちゃった。で、いや、自動延長になってる。大丈夫。センキュー教えてくれてありがとうよ。クリショーやってる、やるの忘れてたわ。よし。棒読みおかしくなってるよな。なんか棒読みすっげえエラー出てたんだよな。今棒読み立ち上げたけどどうだ？でこれはいらん。よし。でダウンロードもう終わったっぽいけどな。放送時間は大丈夫。自動延長だから。で、スチーム立ち上げて、もう終わったんじゃね？ショートカットあるぜ。聞こえてる？お前ら。あれ、棒読みなんかエラー食らってから棒読み喋らなくなったな。変なとこ触ったから棒読みがおかしいなことになってる。棒読みがもう喋らなくなったわ。いや、残業はもうしない。金曜日、木曜日残業したけどもう残業は二度としないでおこうと思った。もうインスコできてんな。できてね。うわー、ごめん。まだ残り72分ある。66分。いや、結構飛んでんな。いやー、まあ60分あるわ。今73に戻った。68。71。72、71。150。150ギガバイト。うん。まあ、60分1時間以上あるな。はやぶさんしてる。はやぶさんしててこれ。はやぶさにはなってる。すまんな。棒読みは多分2、3日後に復活するだろう。ああ。現状はちょっとこれで耐えてくれ。なんか棒読みさっきエラー吐き出してたんだよな。俺がなんか裏いじっちゃったから箱の中。そうだな。飯食おうかな。本当にそう思う。飯食おうかな。1時間ありゃ飯炊けるしな。まあ買ったのは買った。まあ見てもらえればわかるけどダウンロード時間出てるしよ。買ったのは買ったから。6.4 ギガ。飯配信はしません。米炊くとこから始めねえと。買ったな。わからん。ここに書いてあるでしょ。ここに。ほら。これでわかるっしょ。ダウンロード時間50分。けどこれ多分もっと早く終わんじゃねえかな。70分だったのがもう50分になってるからな。安定してないだけで、けど今1時間になってるから70分か。 あ、それはもう申し訳ねえんだよ。うん。1時間半になっちゃう。1時間半になってる。うわ、3時間になってる。うわ、2時間になってる。けどこれ配信止めりゃ多分、もうちょっと早くなんじゃねえかなとは思うけど。今ごめん、2時間になっちゃった。2時間になっちゃった。今1時間40分。こりゃダメだ。飯食ってた方がいいな。ちょっと動画でも見るか、最後。バルダーズゲートの。どんなゲームなのかお前らも知りたいだろ。知らないやついるだろうから。バルダーズゲート3。なんかいい動画ねえか。雑談するか。飯食うわ。公式がなんか出してねえかな。なんか日本人の動画ばっかりだな。アニジャ音じゃなんか流せねえしな。公式がやってねえのかよ、公式が。バイオテックのサムネになってる。まあいいや。どうでもいいや。日本、公式がなんかねえのかよ。じゃあね、ここら辺でいいか。
新しいマップに少しずつ足を踏み入れる。
ダメだこれ。ダメだこれ。日本人が喋っちゃってる。公式ねえのかよ、公式。見るか。公式ねえの、公式。公式動画がないのかよ。あった。あったけど2分。うわ、ゲームのやつがね。
Tell me,
プ
why
ロ
have
モ
you
ーション
come
は
here?
いいよ、動画だから。わかんねえ。これか？これっぽいな。
Invincible so we can strip him.
これでいいだろう。今画面映す。けど2分ぐらいの動画しかない。
Invincible so we can strip him of his advantage.
これをまあゲーム画面だ。おい、いいよ、ムービーは。ムービーはどうでもいい。
You're a pawn, a slave to forces you cannot
この
comprehend.
手のゲームだっていうのは知ってたよ。自分の仕方で。
Kept worth having.
Together, we will strike down the absolute.
バルダーズゲート買った。ディアボルで。バルダーズ買っちゃった。いや、ムービーはいいんだよ。ゲーム画面出せや。
You know what's needed. The natural order must be
ムービ
protected.
ーはいいんだ。
Subtlety will not be an option.
So shocking. Another barbarian with
ゲームクラップ触りやってくれるのねえかな。プレイ動画になる。
Bow before me. Bow before the absolute. Bow!
だそうです。これプレスト5のやつな。あ、これ違うわ。違うゲームだわこれ。
Invincible so we can.
なんかバルダーズゲートでなんか簡単にまとめてるやつねえのかよ。
Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy. That show where we give you some. You start, you choose from one of 7 origin characters. These are all characters connected to the story, but it does streamline things a bit. Combat is turn-based, but it tends to be quick and brutal, which is a welcoming change compared to how long certain encounters could last in Divinity 2. The game does a good job easing you into combat, but like once you're out of the tutorial, the gloves are off. Every encounter is a challenge, and they almost never feel stock or half-baked. Even the smaller encounters usually still demand you to think and use everything and really be challenged. It's not often that you come across something and do 2 melee whacks and then it's dead. Like, no, this is not really that type of thing. Even at the start of the game, there are cool, memorable enemy encounters that feel like something out of a D&D session, like something that somebody just makes up. Like, take for example this part where an undead bursts out of a coffin to scare you, and while you're stunned, it runs around breaking open more coffins to get reinforcements. If you're quick enough and kill the one guy, then nobody wakes up. And it's not all just combat either. For a computer RPG, there are a lot of environmental hazards, and it's not just traps like you'd expect from a D&D game. There are areas where the most dangerous thing isn't the enemies, but the world itself. Like this burning building where you have to like put out fires to get through, or these explosive mushrooms that have to be carefully navigated. There's a lot of jumping too. Lots of like almost platforming sections where the only way to progress is to jump. And with like everything else, the moving powers are essential in this game, just like Larian's other games. If you don't want to get bogged down and overwhelmed by enemies, being able to either teleport depending on who you are or jump long distances is practically essential. It can turn nearly impossible combat encounters much easier with the right movement abilities. This sort of thing always keeps you on your toes, but it can also start to be a bit exhausting on the brain because there's very few combat encounters where you can take it easy, especially because unlike the OG Baldur's Gate games where you could just spam resting whenever you want, this game makes you work for it. One thing that makes this game different from other CRPGs is because of its roots in D&D. Spells don't cost mana to cast. Instead, your characters have spell charges that can be recharged with a special ability once, but otherwise can only be restored by taking a long rest. In most D&D RPGs, you just slam that rest button after every encounter, but this game forces you to think about it a little more, because now you can't just take a nap every 5 seconds. You actually have to spend resources now, and it's not even a small amount. It's pretty significant. We do like that the game actually gives all the food you find in these games like an actual purpose. When you find crates filled with bread or meat or cheese, you're actually gonna go, ooh, yeah, I need that, because you need to spend those resources on resting. It's clever. Even if it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes, like thinking about whether you should rest or not. Overall, we like the mechanic. It adds more depth to a mechanic that originally had none. But of course, it all comes down to your build. The RPG stuff, but also how it affects your dice score, and ultimately you're down to the roll of the dice for everything. It's great that it's at the forefront of the game. It keeps that D&D vibe true to its core, but it doesn't feel hokey, like it's pretending to be a tabletop game or something like that. It just is how it is. And speaking of dice rolls, the role-playing stuff, like we keep saying, is where the game really succeeds. To both of us, this is one of the most impressive things about the game. The depth and width of the role-playing opportunities here is seemingly pretty incredible so far. It seems like every other event or conversation, you start, You choose
ちょっとごめ
from
ん、
one
キャラ
of
クターの
seven
とこ行く。
origin characters. These are all
7
characters
人のオリ
connected
ジナ
to
ル
the
から選
story
べ
with
る。
their own backstories,
独
motivations,
自のバック
race,
ストーリー。
and of course,
独自
class
人種。
type. And most of them are compelling and tempting, really, to select, but we ended up rolling our own custom character. You can also do that. You create them, you change their face, you give them a backstory and a class, and they still have agency in the story, just like anyone else. But good luck focusing on the main quest out there, man. There are a lot of distractions pretty much right out of the gate. And all of it is tempting because it all seems thought out and interesting. Little quests will keep you intrigued, little stories might hook you. The loot may not really always be super exciting at the end of the side quest, but XP and a good adventure just manages to still make it worth it. To Eric, our resident Dungeons & Dragons fan, this feels like a miracle. The production values alone put this in the realm of AAA gaming, but the actual gameplay is about as hardcore and, a little inaccessible to CRPG neophytes as it gets. This is a hardcore computer RPG through and through, and Larian seemingly hasn't really made many compromises. You've got 4 party members total, which feels a little small compared to I think 6 you could get in the original games, but it does streamline things a bit. Combat is turn-based, but it tends to be quick and brutal, which is a welcoming change compared to how long certain encounters could last in Divinity 2. The game does a good job easing you into combat, but once you're out of the tutorial, the gloves are off. Every encounter is a challenge, and they almost never feel stock or half-baked. Resting, it's clever. Even if it's a little nerve-wracking sometimes, like thinking about whether you should rest or not. Overall, we like the mechanic. It adds more depth. Overwhelming at times. It's at points an exhausting game to play, but it's also easy to just get deeply immersed in. Even when you're stuck or you don't want to progress, just go to your camp to rest and start chatting up your party members. This is where things can get pretty fun and seemingly a little spicy. It's really just one of those just one minute kind of games where it really forces you to keep your mind active and engaged at all times. So you do one thing and you just have to see what happens next. Now, if there's a downside to how deep and open the game is, it's that it can be easy to forget to quick save and lose a lot of progress. This happened to me quite a bit. The game only autosaves selectively. It doesn't autosave every time you change maps or talk to people. So if you neglect to make a save and then bumble into a very tough enemy encounter that wipes you out, and it's going to happen a lot, that can lead to a lot of time wasted. So get that old muscle memory back, do those quick saves, don't be like us. And another issue is because of how open-ended the game's story is, it can sometimes feel directionless, at least at first, because you're running around doing all kinds of cool, interesting, random things, and it's sometimes unclear when and how you should resolve certain situations. It's also a little hard to keep track of things sometimes. The game gives you so many options that sometimes when an option doesn't present itself when you think it should, it can lead to confusion. The whole situation at the Emerald Grove near the start is a perfect example. This is a relatively early quest where there's a problem between these refugees and the druids, and part of the reason things have gotten so bad is because the druid leader has disappeared. You might think that finding the druid leader would resolve things. It's the obvious thing to do, right? But it can be a very, very long time before you actually find the guy. So you can spend a good chunk of the early game with this story unfinished, way past the point where it feels like it's over. If you've played a lot of CRPGs, you know what we're talking about, where you hit a point where you're kind of doing something wrong because you think you should be doing something, but the game actually doesn't want you to do that. It's not a huge problem. It's way worse in Divinity 2, which had a lot more dead ends you could hit on quests, but it's still a thing that we've both ran into. For some people, that's great. They love having to figure things out, but it may be frustrating for casual players used to more direct experiences. For me personally, this is what originally made me kind of bounce off of the Divinity games, but with this one, I really stuck with it and found it to be worth it. If you're new to these games, you just gotta train your brain a little bit, and you'll have fun. Now, what helps is that all of this, like Larian's other recents, you can play cooperatively with some other people. which is
これ FF ね
absolutely
ゼロと
crazy
か
impressive, and they need to be commended for that. Now, I know we weren't able
13だっけな
to take advantage of this in our playthrough, so maybe
で
consult
ドラク
another
エの
reviewer or two,
あれ
but
も
just the fact alone that
11
you
だ
can do that is incredibly enticing. And
途中
if
で
you're
やめてる
inclined,
しな
you can play with a controller, and the controls are fine,
頑張ってるだろう
doable as of right now, as good as it can be, I guess, but
全然
we
面
just
白くね
don't
ファイナルファン
prefer
タジー
playing
の
these
0
types
と
of games on a
13
controller.
くっそ
Still,
面
the
白くなかっ
developers have
た
said they will tweak gamepad controls up until the console launch. Either way, you have a lot of options. Controls, accessibility, and a good amount of graphics options. Now, it's not perfect. Of course, it is a CRPG. There is some awkwardness with certain animations, like climbing a ladder, or moving an object, or climbing a ledge sometimes. And there can be some weird cuts or some unloaded assets that flash on screen for a section between screen transitions, but it's mostly solid. Eric didn't have any significant performance issues, but on my end, I had one crash and I had a couple of stutters, especially once you start getting into some of the bigger, dense town areas. But I was able to fix most of my issues with settings and reset, fiddling around, PC stuff. Not the worst. And everybody's machine is different, so maybe consult some other nerds. But at least from our experience, it does not seem like a disaster PC launch like we've seen so many times. It seems fine. And when you get it running good and you got a decent enough graphics card, this game is a looker, man. The characters' faces and the environments are very, very good, above and beyond what we usually see in this genre. Ultimately, again, review in progress, but so far, it's one of the stronger games to release this year already. And that's even though we feel like we've only scratched the surface. The developers have said 75 to 100 hours, but we easily see ourselves rolling other characters and spending way more time. And who even knows how they're going to add to this game in the future? As of right now, it's a result of just good game making on the developer side and good community feedback. The early access period brought player feedback online that you can find for things big and small, from character personality tweaks to quality of life stuff and inventory management, and the end result here, this final release, it's solid. Now with Eric, a Dungeons & Dragons fan, it's the modern Baldur D&D game you've been waiting for. And for me, as a non-D&D fan, it's another type of, a game that asks a lot of you, but is so rewarding the more you unpack it. Or, like peel back the layers, the onions, I don't know. Ultimately, Baldur's Gate 3, upon first impressions, between the two of us, seems awesome. And we're excited to see more reactions and more stories and weird things come out of it. But hey, that's a before you buy. You know how this works by now. We give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion. And now I want to hear yours down in the comments. Are you jumping in day one? What type of character are you going to make? We would love to know. That stuff's fun to share. But also, if you've been playing since the early access period, do you see some differences? Have you been providing feedback? Who are you? What type of player are you? Are you new to this stuff? Let's talk about anything Baldur's Gate 3 down in the comments. If you like this video and you like what we do here, clicking the like button helps us. Thank you very much. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
もう一歩オープンワールドっぽい作りにしてるだけ。いよいよだな。裸もっと入れてえけど無理だ。見たくねえわ。最初から裸。いや、バン食らいたくねえな、ニコ生。まあ、バルダーズゲートの裸なら大丈夫か。バン食らいたくねえ。モッドはあるだろうね。モッドはね。で、ほら見て、まだ1時間ある。ふっせえ、進んでね。まだ1時間見てねえ、見えねえか。まだ1時間あるんですけど。1時間。ちょっと飯食うよ。この間に。飯食う。俺明日7回忌 ?49 日行かなきゃいけないから、9時半。まあまあ別に実家で49日の話聞くだけなら寝不足で行ったって起きれねえんだよな、休みの日って。まあ別に構わんのだが。 いやいや、そんな金はね、みんな家族貧乏人しかいねえ。まあまあ、坊さんのお経聞くだけだよ。よっしゃ、じゃあ一旦飯食うて、これダウンロード終わったらまあまあやるよ。その6時間はやらんだろうけど、四十九日もあるから、まあまあ2、3時間はやるんじゃない。多くて6時間ぐらいかな。十何時間はやらん。まあまあ先行、そうそう、坊さんの話聞いて、あれな、実家で寝てから戻ってくりゃいいだけだしね。寝不足でも。まあまあ実家ではよう寝れんから。多分また幸せ大家族がいるからね。もう疲れて帰ってきちゃうだろうけど。回線細いくねえんだぞ。俺はやぶさにしたんだぜ。外国にサーバーがあるからじゃない？おう1時間50分だった。多分ニコ生やってるからだと思うよ。ニコ生腰つべ多重で。けどアップロードだからな。ダウンロード関係ねえと思うけど。まあまあちょっとぐらいは関係あるっしょ。それに、俺の回線あれだ。そう、ニコ生腰つべ。あと、テレホタイムにほら、つなげなくなってたじゃん。はやぶさの前。ディアボロもそうだし、ドラクエ10もそうだったじゃん。テレホタイム。人がもうネット使うときはもう全然速度出なかったじゃん。で、日中とか、深夜とかは、嘘のように動き出すっていう。それだと思う。まあ、だから回線が悪いんでしょう。何が悪いの？プロバイダーが悪いのかなんかわからんけど。男性つなぐか。じゃあまた後ほど2、3時間は絶対やるとは思うんでね。ダウンロードし終わったら。まあ今1時間30分。1時間30分後ぐらいに会いましょう。まあ多分1時間後ぐらいっしょ。信用はできない。信用はしなくていい。LINE で連絡はしない。じゃあな、ボケど。